In life, many begin, few continue, even fewer finish, and only a handful rise to the level of champions. A champion is not defined by talent, by applause, or by the moment of victory. A true champion is forged in silence, by repetition, by failure, by the will to stand up and try again. Again and again. You see, the difference is simple, but not easy. Ordinary people stop when it becomes uncomfortable. Champions keep playing until they get it right, not for others, not for applause, but because deep inside they know mastery is not a destination, it is a decision. Every single day in life, many people begin with energy, passion, and ambition. They start projects, set goals, and make declarations about what they want to achieve. At first, their movements are loud and filled with excitement. There is fire in their words, determination in their posture, and a clear vision in their minds. But as the path becomes longer and the challenge is more frequent, something begins to fade. The initial spark that ignited their journey starts to flicker. Discomfort appears, progress slows down, the noise of life increases, and then many of them stop. They stop not because they lack talent, not because they are not capable, but because the process did not give them instant results. It tested their patience, and they were not prepared for that test. But those who walk the path of mastery do not operate in this way. They understand something deeper, something quieter. Champions do not rely on motivation, they rely on discipline. They do not chase applause, they pursue alignment. They understand that the repetition of fundamentals day after day is what creates excellence. Not occasional brilliance, but consistent effort. They do not stop when it is difficult. In fact, they begin when it becomes difficult. That is where their work truly starts, because they know the growth is in the resistance. The power lies within the struggle, and every time they fall short, every time they fail, it is not the end. It is feedback. It is a message, a call to sharpen their awareness, to refine their method, and to try again. With more clarity, with more precision. Champions are not born, they are sculpted, piece by piece, moment by moment, through countless repetitions of effort that often go unseen. The outside world may not understand this. People look at outcomes, they admire the success, the trophies, the mastery, but they do not see the hours of deliberate practice, the pain of failure, the quiet moments of doubt, the days when it felt like nothing was improving. But still, they continued, and this is what separates them. It is not that they never had doubts, it is that they chose not to be ruled by them. When others looked for shortcuts, they embraced the long road. When others asked, "How long will it take?" they asked, "How far can I go if I don't stop?" There is a wisdom in repetition that most people never discover. Doing the same thing over and over may sound dull, but only to those who are not paying attention. A master knows that repetition is not just doing the same thing blindly. It is doing it with awareness, with presence, with intention. Each time they repeat, they are not the same person. Their body has changed. Their understanding has deepened. Their mistakes have taught them something new. So the repetition becomes a tool, not of boredom, but of refinement. Each practice session becomes a mirror, each movement a meditation. And over time, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Discipline is not a punishment, it is a gift. It is a reminder that you are in control, not of the outcome, but of the effort. And when you truly embrace this truth, the need for external motivation disappears. You no longer need someone to tell you to keep going, because you already know that you must, not for them, not for praise, but because something inside you refuses to quit. That quiet voice within you that says, "Keep going, one more time again." That voice is not loud. It does not shout, but it is constant, and it grows stronger every time you listen. There will be moments when progress feels invisible, when your actions seem to yield no reward. But this is when you must stay the course. Because real change does not always announce itself. Sometimes it builds silently until one day you look back and realize how far you've come. Champions trust this process. They do not need proof every day. They do not need instant confirmation. What they need is alignment between their actions and their intention. They trust the invisible work. They trust that consistency will reveal its power in time. Most people want to win, but not everyone wants to prepare to win. Not everyone wants to repeat the same drill, the same routine, the same principles until they become second nature. But this is what it takes. Because the goal is not just to get it right once. The goal is to become someone who cannot get it wrong, to reach a level where right action flows naturally from who you are. And that is only possible through the path of constant refinement. Through the willingness to do it over and over until the work becomes a part of you, until your mind, your body, and your spirit move as one, until mastery is no longer something you pursue, but something you embody. The path to mastery is not linear. It is filled with setbacks, delays, and moments where everything seems to go against you. The champion does not interpret these moments as signs to quit, but as necessary parts of the journey. They understand that each obstacle is a form of instruction. Each failure is a disguised teacher. It is not about how fast you move forward, but how deeply you learn at each stage. The depth of your understanding is what strengthens your foundation. Without depth, progress is fragile. It breaks under pressure. But when your progress is rooted in learning, in patience, and in resilience, it becomes unshakable. The repetition of failure becomes the repetition of learning. A common mistake is to measure success only by visible results. When people don't see progress, they think nothing is happening. But just like a seed buried beneath the soil, real transformation takes place beneath the surface. Growth often begins invisibly. The roots form first. They anchor deep into the ground. You cannot see them, but they are essential. Without roots, the plant cannot stand tall. And in the same way, without struggle, without challenge, a person cannot become grounded. Champions trust this invisible process. They are willing to grow underground, in silence, in solitude, knowing that what they are building cannot yet be seen, but will one day be undeniable. The world will sometimes question your pace. People will ask why you continue despite slow progress, why you keep showing up even when the results are small. But what they do not understand is that the champion's reward is not only in the outcome, it is in the person they become through the process. Each day they train, they become more focused. Each failure they embrace, they become more humble. Each repetition, even when it's hard, builds mental resilience, and over time they develop a strength that does not fade under pressure. A presence that cannot be shaken by temporary setbacks, because it was earned through persistence, through struggle, through days of effort without recognition. There is a great strength in not quitting when things don't go your way. To stand in the middle of failure and still choose to move forward, that is real courage. That is where transformation begins, because in that moment you are no longer reacting to circumstances. You are deciding who you want to be. You are no longer a victim of difficulty. You are using difficulty as fuel. This is where champions are made, not in the spotlight, not in the victory, but in those silent battles within, where quitting feels easier, but the heart whispers, not yet. It is not always about changing the situation. Sometimes it is about changing your relationship with the situation. The obstacle doesn't need to disappear. You just need to become stronger, and that strength is built through facing it again and again, until it no longer intimidates you, until it becomes familiar, until the fear turns into clarity, and the resistance turns into readiness. Champions are not those who never feel discomfort. They are those who lean into discomfort and allow it to shape them. No one becomes great by avoiding difficulty. No one rises by only doing what is easy. There is a sacredness in hard work that is often overlooked. It is where humility is learned. It is where self-discipline is tested. It is where you learn to listen to yourself when there is no noise around you, no applause, no encouragement. meant only your breath, your thoughts, and your will. And in that silence, you begin to see what you are truly made of. That's why the champion returns to the same path, even after falling. That's why they do the same drill, the same practice with full attention, because it is not just physical repetition. It is mental conditioning. It is spiritual alignment. Each time they show up, they are not just practicing the skill, they are strengthening the self. True mastery is not about doing more, it is about doing better. It is not measured by how many hours you work, how loud your efforts are, or how busy your schedule seems. It is measured by the quality of your presence, the precision of your action, and the clarity of your mind. Champions understand this. They do not waste energy chasing noise. They do not scatter their focus trying to do everything. They choose a few things, and they go deep. They understand that depth creates strength, while distraction creates weakness. Their discipline is in their focus. Their growth is in their stillness. In a world full of urgency, most people move quickly, but without direction. They are constantly running, constantly doing, but rarely arriving anywhere meaningful. They confuse activity with progress, but movement without intention is just motion, not transformation. The champion does not fall into this trap. They move slowly if they must, but every step is deliberate. Every repetition is purposeful. They don't rush the process because they respect the process. They understand that trying to skip steps only creates gaps in their foundation. So they choose to master the basics again and again until the basics become art. Every time they practice, they are not only training the body, they are training the mind. They are creating a dialogue between thought and action, between awareness and movement. This kind of training is not mechanical. It is alive, it is sensitive, it requires presence. You cannot fake presence. You cannot pretend to be focused. The body knows, the breath reveals it, the results speak it clearly. Champions build the habit of showing up completely, not half-hearted, not distracted, fully present, fully committed, not because someone is watching, but because they are. That is integrity, the alignment between what you do and who you say you are. The pursuit of mastery is not glamorous. Most of the time, it is repetitive, quiet, and often unnoticed. There is no applause in the training hall, no cheering crowds when you fail and try again. But this is where the true transformation happens. The daily practice, the small adjustments, the quiet corrections, these are the things that slowly sharpen the edge of discipline. And discipline is not about pushing harder. It is about being precise. Knowing when to act, when to rest, and when to reflect. It is the balance of effort and awareness, the ability to push with control and to pause without guilt. Champions listen closely, not only to their coaches, not only to their environment, but to their own inner voice. They observe themselves, their breathing, their posture, their patterns. They do not train blindly. They study the self through the practice. That is why repetition does not bore them, because each repetition is a chance to notice something new, something subtle, something that was previously hidden. This level of attention opens a new layer of understanding. It brings light to the unconscious. It refines not only their technique, but their perception. Growth at this level is no longer about speed, but about sensitivity. How aware can you become? How deeply can you feel each movement? How clearly can you sense the imbalance within yourself before it manifests outside? Champions ask these questions. They do not chase results. They chase refinement, and refinement is a lifelong process. There is no finish line, only deeper layers of awareness to uncover. The more they train, the more they realize how much more there is to learn. This humility keeps them grounded. It keeps them curious. It keeps them returning to the same practice again and again, not out of habit, but out of reverence. Mastery is not in the final performance. It is in the preparation. It is in the way you breathe, the way you stand, the way you return to the path no matter how many times you fall off it. The champion's mind is not restless, it is rooted. Not because everything is easy, but because they have learned how to stay centered even when the storm arrives. They have practiced peace in the middle of repetition. They have trained stillness in the middle of movement. Champions are not only defined by how they perform when everything is going right. They are defined by how they respond when everything seems to go wrong. When the rhythm breaks, when the plan falls apart, when progress slows down and the mind becomes clouded with doubt, that is when the real training begins. It is easy to act strong when you feel strong. It is easy to stay focused when things are flowing. But when you are tired, uncertain, and nothing is working as you expected, that is where the mind reveals its true nature. That is the moment when the inner voice becomes either your greatest enemy or your greatest teacher. The disciplined mind does not react impulsively to every challenge. It observes, it breathes, it chooses. This ability to respond with awareness instead of reacting with emotion is one of the greatest strengths a champion can develop. Because in pressure, many people abandon what they know, they forget their principles, they chase quick solutions, but a champion does not chase. They return to the breath, return to the body, return to the fundamentals. The basics are never beneath them, because they know the basics are what carry them through the storm. Staying centered is not about avoiding chaos. It is about learning how to remain clear inside of it. There will always be distractions. There will always be noise, but not all noise needs to be answered. The disciplined mind filters what matters from what doesn't. It does not entertain every thought, every fear, every opinion. It creates space between stimulus and response. In that space is power, the power to remain stable when things are unstable, the power to keep playing, not because the conditions are perfect, but because the commitment is strong. Champions do not attach their identity to outcomes. They do not see failure as evidence of who they are. They see it as information, as data, as part of the process. They don't personalize their mistakes, they study them. They understand that setbacks are not signals to stop, but signals to adjust, to look deeper, to refine their approach, to upgrade their mindset. And because of this, they waste no time in blame or regret. They move forward, not carelessly, but consciously, carrying the lesson, not the weight. A person who trains only when they feel good is not training discipline. They are training preference. True discipline is built when you show up regardless of how you feel. It is forged in those moments when the body is tired, the mind is doubtful, and the path feels heavy, and yet you still move, even slowly, even quietly, but you move. That movement, however small, is an act of power. It is not the size of the step that matters, it is the consistency of the choice behind it. Champions understand this deeply. Their progress may not always be visible, but it is always intentional. In training the mind, patience becomes one of the sharpest tools. Not passive waiting, but active patience. The patience to endure repetition. The patience to stay with discomfort without needing to escape it. The patience to trust a process even when the results are not immediate. This kind of patience is not weakness. It is mental maturity. It is a quiet strength that grows over time and cannot be shaken easily. It allows the champion to remain steady while others panic, to stay committed while others give up. There is an inner silence that begins to grow in those who practice with sincerity, a silence that is not empty but full of clarity, a silence that comes not from avoiding effort but from understanding it. When you have faced your limits, when you have looked at your fears and chosen to keep going, something changes within you. You stop needing everything to be easy. You stop fearing failure. You begin to respect the process so much that you are no longer distracted by shortcuts. The noise fades, the clarity returns, and in that clarity the champion continues, not loudly, but with quiet certainty. In the end, it is not talent alone that creates a champion. It is not luck, nor applause, nor the absence of failure. It is the quiet, relentless decision to return, again and again, to face resistance not as an enemy but as a teacher, to repeat not out of habit but with purpose, to continue even when the world gives you every reason to stop. Champions keep playing, not because they always win, but because they refuse to walk away before they get it right. They understand that mastery is not an act, but a way of living, a way of breathing, a way of showing up with presence, with discipline, with respect for the journey itself. And when others give up, they remain. When others seek ease, they choose growth, not because it is easy, not because it is comfortable, but because deep within they know, this path, though difficult, is the only one worthy of walking. So walk it fully, train your mind, strengthen your spirit, return to the practice, until excellence is no longer something you chase, but something you are.